America, better known as the best godforsaken country this sorry world has to offer. A shining beacon of liberty and freedom. The example of perfection for the rest of the world. Perfect people, perfect economy, perfect food, but most importantly of all, perfect machines of mass destruction. The American people take a massive amount of pride in their war machines. Machines like the P-51 Mustang, which, gifted to the people by God himself, immediately made Adolf shit, piss, and puke all at the same time, forever changing the tide of the war. Or, for example, the F-4U Corsair, the best damn naval-born fighter to have ever existed, ever. Nicknamed the Whistling Death by its adversaries out of pure respect for how awesome and cool and free the American people truly are. But what if I told you that these two shining examples of American perfection are more British than you may think? And as all of the Americans watching this video begin to simultaneously projectile vomit onto the floor, allow me to explain why these Knights of Freedom may have never been successful without our beans on toast enjoying brethren across the Atlantic Ocean. This is exactly how it happened. In April of 1940, the British were in desperate need of airplanes, as Germany was tearing through Europe. They approached the vastly superior Americans, begging them to produce P-40 Warhawks.
Please!
They cried.
We need your spectacular weapons of freedom and democracy!
North American, the creator of the Warhawk, looked at the sorry, desperate Brits and said, "You know what? I love independence so much that I am going to make you a brand new plane, even better than the Warhawk." The Brits responded,
"Oh, gracious America! That's fine and dandy, but we need it fast, within 120 days!
This was an insanely short amount of time to produce a brand new airplane. Nonetheless, the fearless and democracy-loving Americans told them, "That will be no problem. Now get out of my sight." The British immediately began sobbing tears of joy, ever thankful for the selfless assistance of their brothers of freedom.
"We love you, America!"
shouted the pathetic Brits as they were ushered back to Europe to continue being shot out of the sky by Germans. Meanwhile, North American put their heads down and got to work, creating a masterpiece that would soon make all of Europe wish that they could be as astonishing as America. In just 117 days, the prototype was ready. 3 days before the deadline set by the Brits. "We're just built different," explained the Americans as they passed the plane over to the flabbergasted Brits.
"It's beautiful,"
the Brits uttered, with a single tear rolling down their cheek as they first laid eyes on the machine that would soon save them all. With a blistering top speed of 382 miles per hour, it was faster than the latest fighters in Britain's arsenal. Furthermore, the incredibly efficient and low-drag wings of freedom allowed it to fly 60% further than the vastly inferior Spitfire. The Brits deemed this plane the Mustang because of how fucking sexy and cool it was. However, this is where the story takes a bit of a turn. The first version of the Mustang was not without its faults. Primarily, its issues stemmed from the 1,100 horsepower American-made Allison engine, which had poor performance at higher altitudes. This is where the British first began to show that they may not be the brainless cavemen that America assumed them to be. While the Americans were busy ignoring the Mustang, the Brits performed an engine swap with their Rolls-Royce engine, originally designed for the Spitfires. The superbly designed American airframe partnered perfectly with the British engine, turning it into God. Additionally, the British had designed the teardrop canopy for their Hawker Typhoons. This canopy gave a superb view to the pilot of the rear side of the airplane. This would eventually be added to the Mustang in the D models, making its pilots even more aware than ever before. And now, you may be saying,
Well, come on. Maybe it was originally made for the British, but it still probably would have been made anyway.
to that I say, fair enough. But let us now turn our attention to the Corsair, which was arguably saved from the shitter by the Brits. The Corsair was America's problem child during its development. Originally meant to replace the aging and underpowered F4F Wildcat, it took fucking ages to make it into service. As a side note, this is actually how America ended up with the F6F Hellcat, which was originally only meant to be a stopgap until the Corsair could arrive, before everyone realized how fucking awesome and American it too would prove itself to be. But that's a story for another time. The idea behind the Corsair was to take an absolutely massive engine and shove it into a small, carrier-capable airframe. But this would prove to cause some issues. For one, the colossal engine required a huge propeller, making it so the landing gear had to be ridiculously long as to prevent the propeller from striking the ground. However, this would be an issue for a plane that was intended to make harsh landings on an aircraft carrier. To reduce the necessary length of the landing gear, the iconic inverted gull wing was added to this beast of democracy. However, this would not be the end of the issues caused by the ginormous Pratt & Whitney engine. For one, there was the dreaded left wing dip. When the Corsair stalled, it would drop its left wing. Pilots would attempt to apply power to correct it, but the sheer amount of torque caused by the engine would simply cause the plane to flip upside down. Believe it or not, this is not a situation you would want to be in while only a few feet from the ground. Additionally, with the long nose required to house the engine, there was a whole 14 feet of airplane between the pilot and the nose of his bird, making forward visibility very bleak. Not to mention the massive cowling attached to the nose, which only blocked the pilot's view further. Believe it or not, this was also problematic when trying to land on a fucking boat. The Corsair also liked to float in the air during attempted landings, stubbornly refusing to set down on the deck. Riding the line between too much speed and too little was difficult and downright dangerous. And even if it did manage to make it onto the deck, it would often bounce, causing the hook to miss the arresting wire altogether. Because of these issues, the Corsair was originally only provided to the crayon-consuming Marines to be used from airfields, bravely allowing the British to figure out how the fuck to land this thing on a goddamn boat. The Brits immediately needed to make modifications. For one, the British carriers were not as big and awesome as their epic American counterparts. In order to fit this machine of freedom on their boats, the ends of each wing had to be clipped down by 8 inches. This had the unintended consequence of fixing the issue of floating during landings, as well as improve roll rate. Additionally, the superior-brained Brits added a variable rate bleed valve to the suspension of the landing gear, largely fixing the issue of bouncing on landing. The British made further big brain moves by simply deciding to wire the top of the cowling shut, which both allowed for better visibility and prevented oil from getting on the windshield. Eventually, they would also add a new canopy based off of the Malcolm hood, which allowed for the pilot's seat to be raised, as well as better overall visibility. Lastly, the Brits began making a wide left-hand turn into the landing, allowing the pilot to see the deck of the carrier until the very last moment before touchdown. At long last, the beast had been tamed, and the Corsair was now ready to be equipped on the carriers of American justice. The Brits had finally returned the favor of the best plane ever made, the Mustang. I underestimated you, Britain. Thank you for what you've done, said America to the humble Brits.
No problem, America. I'd do it again for a country like you.
They look each other deep in the eyes. You know that I'm going to give you minimal credit in the history books. The Brits look back shyly at America and explain.
Oh, America. You know I love to be used.
The two countries share an embrace and a passionate kiss. And then they fuck, grabbing him by, violently thrusting. And that is exactly how it happened. If you've made it this far in the video, then that means you've made it
To the secret word of the day!
If you're coming here from my TikToks, then you already know what's about to go down. But for all you newcomers from YouTube, then allow me to explain. As is tradition at the end of every Gunfrog video, I will be providing you with a secret word of the day. You are to take this word and reflect upon it, as well as post it in the comments. But make sure to be sneaky, as it is a secret. I will now also shamelessly ask that you like and subscribe. So, without further ado,
Today's secret word is
Flumpus. So be sure to leave a comment if you're in on the secret, and like and subscribe.